Hello, Hudson Valley. I'm Emily Comber, your host, and I'm very happy to have John Allegro here with me today.
Great to be here. Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, we have a lot to talk about today.
Couldn't imagine what.
I know. A lot has happened. John is a member of United Monroe Executive Committee. John is the chairman of the Annexation Committee specifically, and has been a tremendous spokesperson for the United Monroe organization these past really crucial months.
Thank you.
Since January, I guess.
Yes, yes. Since we heard about the first annexation of 507 acres, the first petition.
Exactly. So first we wanted to announce that our candidate, Dennis McWaters, was elected to the town board this past November 4th election. It's a huge victory in Monroe, and it's a special victory, I think, because the Alliance, which is a dissident group within the village of Curious Joel, decided to back the United Monroe candidate for town council. And I think it was in large part due to our efforts of outreach for understanding between our communities. We had a great deal of people handing out flyers in Curious Joel, explaining, we don't hate you, this is not personal, we have issues with your government, we have issues with the Monroe Town Board, and we wish to come together and communicate as far as how we're going to operate going forward between our two communities. I think that was a great part.
Well, yeah, I had an opportunity to hand out the flyers one Sunday morning in Curious Joel, and I was actually really surprised and happy about the response that we received. You know, a lot of the KJ citizens were pulling over and saying, you know, please give me one, please give me two, and I really feel like we made a very positive impact in the relation between the communities by doing that.
I agree, and I think it helped to counteract all of the negative and really highly charged, scary propaganda that has been historically distributed by the KJ government to their citizens, who really have very little access to any other information besides what their leadership want them to see. And I think that's an important point to reiterate, because I don't think people outside of Monroe, or maybe even inside of Monroe, recognize how insular this particular community is. I think people who live in Rockland or even in other areas who are familiar with the ultra-Orthodox communities don't recognize that Curious Joel is unique in that it's the citizens of Curious Joel are solely Satmar. They're of one religion. They're not of multiple different sects of Hasidim or Orthodoxy. They're one community, one insular community, ruled by one Grand Rebbe who lives in the village, and the main government of this village is of that same congregation. Right. And even the yeshivas, all the school districts that are sanctioned by that Rebbe, called Yetev Lev, are also all one. So it's really one insular group that has a very specific agenda and are very eager to continue the growth and the spread of their message to their people, which is often at odds with the communities surrounding this 1 square mile village.
Right. Well, you know what I thought was interesting about the pre-election messages this year. And I've lived in Monroe since 1998, and every election there's always some kind of strange, hateful or misleading literature that comes from somewhere, and it's usually related to Curious Joel. And the purpose of this literature is to sway the votes from people outside of Monroe to vote for a candidate that, say, the Curious Joel faction would like us to vote for. And this time we had the strange instance of letters coming signed by or saying, this is from Harley Doles, the famous I am Harley Doles letter, that really directed a lot of hate toward not only United Monroe, but I believe all the people that live outside of KJ and within the town of Monroe. And then, of course, that one Sunday night before the election on November 2nd, we found Councilman Dan Burke and Councilman Jerry McQuaid handing out literature
Really?
in KJ. And the one thing that stands out in my mind is United Monroe is crazy. They're crazy.
Yes.
So this is what this insular community is being told from people on the outside, that their Grand Rebbe and their government is sponsoring.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's pretty heavy, scary stuff. And since we've been more in communication with the Alliance leaders, and the Alliance are a dissenting group within Curious Joel who do not agree with the main faction, the main governing body, and the main synagogue, the main Grand Rebbe. They follow a different Grand Rebbe. And, well, a part of the Alliance does, another part of the Alliance doesn't follow that the other Grand Rebbe. There's several different factions that make up the Alliance, to be exact. But since we've been in conversation with some of these leaders of this Alliance group, we've learned and been given so many translations of the literature that has been distributed to every citizen in Curious Joel, and it is some scary stuff.
Yeah, it's very insightful, not inciting, not
right. It's very scary. It's the stuff that violent outbursts and kind of a mob mentality is. It's the stuff that those those issues are made of, which brings us to what recently occurred this past week. What was the date that this fire
that was
broke out?
Friday, the 14th.
The 14th.
Yeah.
There was a arson.
Well, the fire was Monday, the prior Monday, the 10th, I guess it was, or the 9th.
Was it?
The 10th. Monday
Okay.
the 10th was the fire.
Okay. Fire broke out in Curious Joel on the border of Monroe on a property which was owned by a big major developer who is very interested in the 507-acre annexation being passed because he will benefit dramatically financially from this annexation because high-density housing will be built, and he being a developer, he stands to gain a lot financially. After the election, seeing the results of the election and how the Alliance voted with United Monroe, the hated United Monroe, who the KJ government has accused of being horrible, hateful people who wish the citizens of Curious Joel harm, and these are their words. Seeing that the Alliance broke away from the main government and helped to elect the United Monroe candidate, there was so much anger and so much rage. Alliance members witnessed that there were some boys, and this is allegedly, but we've heard it from a couple of sources, that some boys from the neighboring yeshiva came onto this property and burned down and looted and raided and vandalized all of these temporary trailers. Now, these trailers were large. This was a series of trailers which was housing a girls' school. The girls' school was vacated recently because a new school was built. This was a temporary location for this girls' school. And this fire was very serious. And firemen from many, many neighboring communities showed up to assist in putting it out. I think there were water pressure problems. It was a very difficult fire. And it could have been very dangerous, and we're all very glad that no one was hurt. However, this was clearly a retribution fire set in frustration and anger at the Alliance for having supported Dennis McWaters.
Right.
So this is the kind of scary, violent situation we find ourselves in right now in Monroe, simply for wanting fair, equal, transparent representation.
Yeah, and you know, I believe that the alliance members were looking for that. They've gone through a history of not being permitted to build their schools within the confines of the village of Curious Joel. They've told us about many instances where they had problems getting any kind of building permits or water or sewer hookups and things like that. And I think it was a great step for them to vote for a candidate that stood for honesty and open government and fairness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad to see this happening. That this alleged retribution is occurring, and they feel that way. And I don't see any reason to doubt why they're feeling this way about what's going on. And then, of course, the Friday after, which was Friday the 14th, the excavators rolled in and demolished the buildings, the trailer buildings, and one of those buildings, which had remained intact, we're told, was an active synagogue. And this was a Friday. This was Friday morning before sundown, before the Sabbath. An active synagogue, we're told, was destroyed.
Very scary.
Yeah.
Very scary stuff. And just to reiterate what you just said, just a few days, was it just a few days? I'm trying to remember the timeline. It was shortly after the fire, and which was deemed arson, or deemed suspicious, and it was being investigated as an arson. All of a sudden, at the crack of dawn, a few days later, bulldozers come in.
Right.
They've got an order from the village of KJ to demolish all of the trailers. And the town of Monroe building department was there, representative.
Building inspector Maldonado. Yeah.
Maldonado was there as well to see to it that this was followed through, because the land is partly in Monroe, partly in Curious Joel. And I think that everybody was even more shocked. I mean, as though the fire wasn't shocking enough. Then you've got bulldozers coming and demolishing, which to my mind is the scene of a crime. And to find out that the state police were escorting them in and allowing this to occur is extremely disturbing and scary, because we wonder, where's the justice?
Well, I did hear that all the data and evidence that needed to be gathered for the fire investigation had been gathered. So, thankfully, hopefully, an investigation will not be impeded. That was my first suspicion.
I hope that's true. I really hope that is absolutely the case. But I think in all of our minds, it seemed so rushed and hurried. And those that were praying or utilizing one of those trailers as their shul for not to be able to enter it and maybe get their belongings or access it before this happened so suddenly. Something just doesn't sit right. Yeah.
And I think what's good about what's been going on with this post-election blowback, so to speak, is that so many people in the town of Monroe, outside of KJ, are now informed as to what goes on within the confines of that village and within, at the direction of what I call the KJPE, the Curious Joel Power Elite. And I really, the comments and the conversations that I've seen and had with people from Monroe, they've really stepped up, and I'm really, very proud to be part of this community after hearing all this. So
I agree, and I know that they're, occasionally on the blogs and in Facebook world and social media, you'll see a couple of naysayers. You'll see a couple of people saying, "What did you promise the alliance? You're making deals. You must have cut some kind of, behind the scenes deal in order for the alliance to have put their votes behind you." And we can't say enough.
Yeah, well, the answer to that is nothing.
Nothing. We promised good government. Yeah. That's all we've ever been about. All we've ever been about was electing people who will be accountable, civil, and transparent. Mm-hmm. That's always been our message. Yep. And Dennis McWaters, you won't find a more honest, upstanding guy in the world. He was our first guest on Hello Hudson Valley a few weeks back. So we're very happy about Dennis. Now let's shift to the annexation.
Okay.
Because why don't you give us background for the viewers? When the first annexation, the second annexation,
so we'll start at
to where
507?
we are now. Yeah.
Okay. I think it was December 27th, 2013, petitioners filed a petition with the town of Monroe and the village of Curious Joel to bring 507 acres from the town of Monroe into the municipal boundaries of Curious Joel. This, in essence, would double the footprint of Curious Joel, and based on Curious Joel's current building codes, would enable them to triple their population in relatively short time. Shortly after the petition was filed and the outrage and the participation of the Monroe community in town board meetings, we found through a news report, I think it was in February, by Chris McKenna in the Times-Herald Record, paperwork was unearthed that showed Curious Joel promising the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation a certain amount of revenue that would come into KJ based on water hookups for the KJ municipal water system that would in turn be paid back to the Environmental Facilities Corporation to fund the bond for the pipeline, in which they were told by the Environmental Facilities Corporation, hey guys, you're not solvent, and if you don't show us a plan to pay this note, we're going to call in the note. The premise of the ability to pay for all of these pipeline hookups was projected 8,550 dwelling units and another 2,000 dwelling unit equivalents, which would be commercial or industrial properties, at a rate of something like $25,000 per hookup. Mm-hmm. So what they were doing was basically collateralizing to the Environmental Facilities Corporation something that they didn't even have yet. So as we look back, obviously there was some kind of a deal in the works where if this annexation petition was put together, if certain members were elected to the town board, that there would be a yes vote on the annexation.
Right.
That
deal was clearly made.
Yes.
With the current sitting Monroe Town Board.
Right.
Which proves that these guys were elected to vote yes on this annexation. Right. And this annexation needed to happen in order for KJ to fund the pipeline.
Right. And we witnessed countless times Harley Doles, Dan Burke, Jerry McQuaid swearing on a stack of Bibles, we can't talk about the annexation because it's going to endanger what would happen afterward based on our vote, et cetera, et cetera. Right. However, anytime they had an opportunity to get in front of a camera or make a comment, it was in favor of the annexation.
Or minimizing impact.
Or minimizing the impact. Right. Exactly. Minimizing the tax impact, the environmental impact.
Yes.
And the famous Harley Doles line is, this could take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Right.
Which is not true. An annexation is supposed to be tidied up within, I'd say, 90 to 120 days based on the New York State General Municipal Law.
Right.
We, fortunately, have been held up awaiting the Department of Environmental Conservation's determination on lead agency for the 507-acre annexation.
And I believe, and I think that our organization can take a certain amount of credit for that.
I think so.
I believe that I don't believe that the town board or the leadership of KJ had any clue that we would stick around after the election. I think that after they won the 2013 election and Harley Doles became the supervisor, Jerry McQuaid was reelected, and Rick Colon as well, that I don't think they had any idea that United Monroe would stick around and dig in our heels and say, no way.
And I've seen that since 1998. I've seen a couple of other really well-intentioned grassroots movements that tried to, get people in position to clean up the corruption and preserve the rural environment of our community. And it's really hard after you lose an election like we did in 2013. It's really hard to sustain. But you and the other members who ran at the time really drilled up the awareness, and it just didn't go away. And at this point, we've reached a critical mass. It's not going to stop.
No, and I think the amount of media attention and the amount of articles in the local and regional newspapers, and we're getting a little bit of national media attention, is certainly helping. And the amazing team
that's been great
that we've assembled to create awareness, and that's why we're doing this show. To help create more awareness, because this show will not just be broadcast in Monroe. We're all over the News 12 distribution area, which can only help. And I hope people, even if they don't live in Monroe, I hope that they'll understand that the issues facing Monroe affect all of Orange County, and we share many of the same issues that Sullivan County are experiencing and Rockland County are experiencing. So I think that what we're talking about relates to most of the people in the region.
Right, and that's what I've been telling any candidate, any elected official that I could possibly meet. People need, and even citizens, we need to understand that this is not just a Monroe issue.
Right.
This is going to explode if any of these annexations are permitted to move forward.
Right.
And the reason is we've just come out of a low in the real estate market in Monroe, and opportunists, which is fine. It's good old American business. Opportunists will come in and buy depressed value properties, usually with the intentions of rehabilitating and making things better.
Right.
Well, in this case, we had opportunists come in and buy up between 500 and 1,100 acres during a depressed real estate market with the intentions of urbanizing.
Changing the zoning, possibly annexing into a different municipality, into Curious Joel, for the purpose of changing the zoning and building high density, because much of the 507 acres, 300-something of those acres, is currently zoned for rural residential use, 1 acre per home. If shifted into Curious Joel, it will become immediately high density zoning. And let's get back to that, because I'm not sure how much more time we have, and I really want to get to the fact that after the 507-acre annexation was filed, there was a major response to that. Our organization led the charge in immediately raising funds to gain legal counsel, and then what transpired after that, I'm sure you can explain.
Sure. I guess we were, waiting. It was the calm before the storm. Everybody was waiting for the DEC commissioner to make a decision on lead agency. Multiple deadlines for the determination passed.
And the lead agency is the person who's the
municipality that
the environmental review process for the annexation.
Right.
And the decision was between the Village of Curious Joel leadership or the Town of Monroe leadership. It's like a lesser of two evils situation. Both have no interest in representing the Monroe citizens surrounding the 507 acres or the Monroe citizens outside of Curious Joel, because they were not elected. By a huge margin, were elected by the Village of Curious Joel alone.
Right. And that environmental review is based on environmental, social, and economic issues. So it's not only the flowers and the trees and the birds and the bees. It's all other factors,
and fiscal, which is huge.
And we cannot trust Curious Joel based on their track record of DEC and federal environmental violations to conduct an honest and open investigation.
We have very little time. Let's talk about what's happened today. Just a few days ago, we found out that the Village of Curious Joel, in addition to the 164-acre petition that they filed months later over the summer,
to try to hurdle
because the 507 has been held up for so long, they filed the 164, which is part of the 507 acres, to push that through quickly, because they wanted to get at least a piece of this thing done so that they could start paying back, as you mentioned, this loan to the Environmental Facilities Corporation. Now that's maybe going to take a little longer than they hoped, and they want to have more leverage. Now they're proposing a new village, which doesn't require municipal approval at all, just administrative approval by the supervisor of the Town of Monroe. And this is and the new village they're proposing is 1,170 acres
Right.
of land, and a lot of it is outside of KJ. Obviously, it's all outside of KJ, but it's
South of Route 17.
South of Route 17. Okay. It includes a lot of the 507, plus a lot more acres, all the way to Larkin Drive by the Target and Walmart.
Including Target, Home Depot,
huge,
Best Buy.
Huge threat.
Yeah. And, people who read the local photo news newspaper went to their mailboxes this past Friday and saw the proposed map of Glilos Curious Joel, which is the vicinity of Curious Joel. And they saw the plan. And the plan was to incorporate this village and then annex this village into the existing village of Curious Joel, which now we're talking about practically tripling the footprint of Curious Joel.
Right. Huge. Mm-hmm. And we will be having a podcast shortly.
Yes, we will.
John Allegro and myself will be launching a podcast soon where people can listen in and listen to our next moves, our next steps, our opposition to this new village. But right now, we are going to be going to our Hands Across the Pond segment. This is a rally that occurred on November 2nd, and we have some footage we'd like to share with you right now. So enjoy that.
Extremely important because it's for the future of all homeowners who live in the Monroe area. If you want a voice, you must get out and vote on Tuesday, November 4th.
Why is it important people vote? It's important people vote every single election. You know how many people have died for this country's right to have the ability to go out and vote? And this time is more critical than ever. Your vote is important. Get out and vote. This election, every election.
A lot of people have to understand that your local government is your first line of defense in the quality of life, what you are for your community. So you are the voice of those who represent you, who you get elected for what you want in your community, not just for one to be, but for all. That's why it's so important to come out and vote, because it's a right that we have, that people fought for, died for, to give us the opportunity to create the world the way we want it.
Very inspiring. There were so many wonderful people there that day, just 2 days prior to the election where Dennis McWaters won, and it was wonderful to see so many people out that day on that chilly day.
And it was cold and windy,
it was a
as all of our rallies are.
Yes, exactly. They all seem to fall in those frigid of days. Thank you, John, for being here.
Well, thank you.
I look forward to working with you in the future on our podcast and continuing the fight.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Until next time.